Good morning, everybody. We're going to be working on Unit 5 today in class, and the topic for this unit is Gateway Subscribed Services. And I want to explain what that means for starters. When you become a student at a school, very often you have access to things that otherwise might cost you money for free. And some of those things are pretty significant. So the aim here today is to kind of point you to some of the resources that you have available and get you using them. So I have a kind of a list there in the topic area, and one of those things, we kind of went out of sequence last week a little bit, and you got a little bit of a preview of what we used to call lynda.com, which is now called LinkedIn Learning. And just in case you guys are not aware of what LinkedIn is a professional social network. Does anybody here already subscribe to LinkedIn? Yeah, it's usually us older people or people working in the industry. And you know, let's just go to that site really quick. We will kind of revisit this later when we start talking more about career things. But LinkedIn is a social network that is designed for professionals. So in other words, you're not going to go on here and post about what you're having for dinner, or you know, how much you partied the night before or something like that, or what concert you went to or whatever. But it does provide a professional profile for yourself. There is social interaction on here, and a lot of recruiters use it to hire people. Remember Jason who came in last week, right? He said that he just changed his profile like title a little bit, and all of a sudden he was getting phone calls. That's how LinkedIn can help you. There's also now that LinkedIn got purchased by Microsoft a couple of years ago, and it was kind of a coup, actually. You know, when it happened, I was thinking, well, that's a brilliant move on Microsoft's part, because now they hold like the professional information of all these people who are serious about their careers. And I was like, that's pretty dastardly almost, you know. And I think the buyout was like billions of dollars for a company that doesn't turn a profit. LinkedIn doesn't turn a profit, but everybody uses it. But I think it was kind of a brilliant move on Microsoft's part. Microsoft also went ahead and purchased lynda.com, right? So they bought the lynda.com, and then they bundled it in with LinkedIn. So what used to be a separate website is now under this umbrella. As a Gateway student, you have complete access to this resource for free, and it is not an inexpensive resource. If you look into like paying for it on a monthly basis, I think it's about $60 a month. Now, if you think about like the amount of training opportunities that are on here, that's actually kind of a bargain. You know, if you're paying out of pocket, if you can't afford to go to school but you still need to learn stuff, this is a great way to do it without like breaking the bank. So you guys don't have to pay a penny for it, and you have access to just about any kind of course you can think of that involves anything that's kind of like on-screen technology. So office suites, music production, video, web programming, software programming, operating systems, networking, blah, 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 blah. It just goes on. And it's almost overwhelming if you start looking through some of the categories here. So you look like business topics. Look at all the different things that are available in the creative fields, and I can let you read the screen yourself. In the technology area, some pretty significant technologies, and and I'm also pretty proud to say that one of our instructors that teaches here in the web program, Christian Herr, he's done a number of videos for LinkedIn already, or Lynda, and for a few other organizations too. It's just kind of one of his little side gigs. So that's kind of neat, right? Because it shows you that, the quality of instructors that we have here are top-notch, so much so that they're on a site like this. So I encourage you to come in here and explore this site. And I know we talked about it a little bit last week. You can see that, for example, I use it once in a while. Like, I'm teaching the Python class, so I started watching their Python course. Of course, I didn't get very far in it, but I did start watching it recently, like when I was doing like some Windows servers install a while back. I looked at their Windows Server stuff, and frankly, you'll find stuff that's very pertinent to what you're studying, but you also might find stuff that you're not studying that you're just kind of interested in. Why not? Here's an opportunity to learn it for free. So take advantage of it. It's really a good resource. When you guys stop being students here, this is going to go away, and then you'll have to pay for it. You will find that what they do, or at least they used to do with Linda, is they would take snippets of all of these courses and put them on YouTube. So you get like a 3-minute chunk or something, and then hopefully to tease you into paying for the service. There are other websites, frankly, where you can get some of this similar type of content for free, but I'm going to tell you it's not always as high a quality. I'm just going to bring up on screen here, just real quick, the one example that I have in our unit folder here. So this is one of our activities. So I'm going to bring this video up.
Before we get started learning the specifics of HTML, I want to take a moment to explain the importance of HTML and why it's so critical to web design. If you've seen me talk about web design before, you've probably heard me say to new web designers that they need to learn at least the 3 core languages of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Now that's all well and cool, right? So you're watching the videos like being on YouTube. You can see there's closed captioning down here. You can control the volume. And if you hit the little widget, you can also see that you can change the video quality. But this is kind of like an iframed version of the videos that are on Linda. So it's just injected into this website. So you're not really getting the full features of it this way. I always recommend that if you can, go directly to the site, find, something on HTML, and I'm just grabbing stuff at random here, folks, right? I haven't watched this course here. Is this the same guy? It sure is. But if you go in and you start watching a course, I want to show you some of the cool features that are available. All right, so I'm sorry that the guy's talking. But as he's talking, notice that there's a complete breakdown of all the different parts of the course. So if you want to go to just like a specific topic, you can do that. The other thing that's really cool is everything has full transcript. So watch what happens when I hit play. Watch the transcript on the right.
These are lessons that will let you play around with the code a little bit and get a feel for what's involved in creating a web page.
Now isn't that cool, right? So all the text and all the verbiage is there. On top of it all, they also have, one of my favorite tools when I do this, is they have this speed control, but you can only get this when you're on the site and using their player. And some of you probably already do this on YouTube, so I don't mean to like belittle your knowledge in any way, shape, or form. But one of my favorite ways to consume this content is I'm like, I can't sit here for 3 hours and watch this course. You know what? I'm going to bump up the speed. So I'll often do this. I'll take it up to like 1.5.
After that, take a deeper look into what it means to be a web designer and the various areas of web design that you might be interested in specializing. Next, we'll talk about ways that you can get online quickly.
All right, so it's a little more difficult to hear, but what I normally do is like if there's something I kind of already know, I just play it fast. Then if there's something I really want to hear, I put it back to normal speed. But I always like to hear other people's approaches on how they think about things and teach things. And sometimes, and you guys should think about this as well. You have a book that you're reading through, and then you have me here kind of guiding you on how to do HTML. But I might not say it in a way that totally resonates with you and really sticks in your brain. It's okay to grab an outside resource, and maybe that will resonate with you or give you that aha moment, give you that little connection that maybe we didn't get in class. Or maybe during that moment you were in the bathroom or you were looking at Facebook or something and missed it. But these outside resources are wonderful. This is a fantastic service. The quality of the content is amazing. They also have, for some of these courses, like right here, they also have exercise files. So you can download the exercise files and follow along with the people teaching the course. I think that's totally cool. With some of these are complete courses. If you can push all your way through the whole course, they also give you a little badge, and you know where the badge ends up? On your LinkedIn profile. So people can see that you took the JavaScript course or the HTML course. And why not? Right? I think it's kind of a neat feature. So that's the one benefit of those two services being linked together. All right, so that's lynda.com. I do have an activity in our unit folder that asks you to explore that and then kind of address a couple of little points with it. The other service I want to look at real quickly is this thing called BrainFuse. And for those of you that have used Blackboard before, you'll notice that we have this link in the sidebar, and I'm going to say it should be in every course shell. Instructors do have the option to remove it. I just kind of opt to like, just leave it, you know. I'm not the hugest fan of this service, but I'm going to jump into it and I want to show you what it does, okay? So BrainFuse is basically kind of like an online support system of sorts. So you see, it is branded with Gateway, but it's really a third-party service. If you go through Blackboard, you're automatically logged in. So I didn't have to do anything, I'm just in, right? So notice that they have a couple of things here. So one thing they have is they have live tutors online, supposedly 24/7, that can jump in and help you with your stuff. Now I hear mixed things from students, so I've never really formally used the service to say I think it's really good or really bad, but I do know some students that use it and say positive things, and I hear other students that say, I don't know, I'd rather go to the tutoring center, you know. So just take it for what it's worth. But if you, let's say computer and tech, okay, that doesn't really, that's not like the programming languages I want to find, right? So you can actually do a little bit of like looking around, and I have a couple of examples of things that you want to look at in there. But what you could do is maybe you might come up here and just type, no results found. Well, what are you guys going to say about that?
It's bogus.
Yeah, it's bogus. Absolutely, Cordy. It is bogus because you're not going to find the real detailed kind of stuff that you are going to need help with. What it is really helpful for is gen ed topics, like how to write a paper, you know, how to do some basic math, and those are the things that people struggle with the most in school. So we'll get people to go all the way through all our tech courses, but struggle with math and English. You know what, folks, those courses are really important. And if you're not aware of this, Gateway does have a policy now that if you're like in the program full-time, you have to complete English and math in the first 2 semesters before you can take any 3rd or 4th semester courses, just so you know that. It did not used to be that way. This is the first year they're enforcing it. Statistics show that if you do take English and math in your first 2 semesters and complete it successfully, you are much more likely to graduate by a factor of like 3 or 4. So that's why they're doing it. So they want people to graduate and they want people to succeed. And you see like Jason who came in, right? He still has a couple courses left, you know. They're not any of the program courses. I think it's like technical writing, and I forget what the other one was that he said. And technical writing is basically an English course, right?
A lot of writing.
It is a lot of, but you know what? Guess what I spent half my day doing most of the time is writing. It might be emails, it might be documents. We spent most of the afternoon yesterday doing these documents that we have to do every year for every program. And then we forgot that they were due on Monday, so here we are as instructors scrambling to get them done. We threw kind of an ad hoc meeting and just spent, you know, collaborative typing. And that's actually kind of a perfect segue into where I'm going to go next. So this is BrainFuse. Just remember that it's there. You can look through the environment if you want. You know, explore the pieces that I suggested that you explore, and then make an evaluation if you think this is something you may or may not use. I am keeping kind of I guess an informal survey as the result of whatever you type into your homework. You know, I asked people, do you think you're going to use this service? Why or why not? I'm just curious. For some people, I think it can be very helpful because, you know, for whatever reason, you kind of get embarrassed to go down to the Learning Success Center and ask for tutoring help. Can I tell you guys what? Don't be. Please, if you're struggling and you're embarrassed to talk to me, please go down there and talk to those people. Did I mention that there are students, either grads or current students, and they're really sharp and they're really helpful and they get it and they know what you guys are going through? And you know, I've just heard such great things about the tutors down there. I know them personally, and I hear just marvelous things about what they do. For some people, it's been enough to help people succeed, so don't ever be ashamed to go down there. It's not like that. It's kind of it's a support mechanism. There's no shame in it at all. All right, let's go back over to our unit folder. And I actually want to, you know, before I go to the next thing, you know, because I do want to talk about Office 365 and Google Apps. That's kind of like one of the big things.
You have to send it to trouble ticketing because they do have, you're right about these days for that.
But I'm going to divert us to kind of a fun activity right now. Okay, so I have this like goofy little assignment I've always done in this class, because one thing that we do when we code is we're on the keyboard all day. We're using the mouse and keyboard and staring at a monitor all day. But it always floors me when I look around and I see people type, how many people were never really properly taught to type. Okay, when I was going to school, so I'm totally dating myself here, just so you guys get a little perspective. In junior high school, I had to take an elective, and I was like, oh, keyboarding looks like it might be easy, right? So I take a keyboarding class, and back then, we didn't have computers in the classroom. Computers are kind of like a new concept. We didn't have personal computers didn't exist when I went to junior high school, just to kind of give you an idea. Well, that's not entirely true. They did, but they were exorbitantly expensive, and they're nothing like the machines we have now. So when I learned keyboarding, guess what I learned on? A typewriter. Yeah. And guess what kind of typewriter? A mechanical typewriter, not even an electric one. No autocorrect. So it was like, and then the bell would ring, and when you got to the end of the line, it would go ding, and then you hit the little thing and move the carriage over to go to the next line. And I think by the end of the course, after a semester, I think I got up to maybe 25 words a minute on that, with pretty high error rate. All right. The funny thing is I then went on to high school, and in high school they had a class like that too, right? But by that time they had like Apple computers were kind of new, and they had these like silly little IBM computers, and so I took another keyboarding class once again on a typewriter, but this time it was electric.
So what's the difference? It auto-corrected?
No, not auto. It didn't have autocorrect, but what it did have is this ribbon that was both black and white, and then you could switch it to the white mode, backspace, and then type over your mistake to fix it. The other thing that we had at that time too, and I remember my dad had a typewriter for his business, and he got a new one, and he brought the one from the business home, and I was like, oh, this is awesome, I can type papers now. Because you would get, back then, it's really strange, you would get like an assignment, it's like, you got to do a term paper, do your drafts on by hand, but you got to hand in a typed copy for the final version. And this is when people didn't have typewriters and didn't have computers, folks. So it was kind of like this whole thing. In fact, there were people that made a living typing papers for people. You'd give them like your handwritten notes, and then they would type it up. But we got a typewriter at home, and it was kind of a revelation. Now that one didn't have autocorrect on it, but I would buy erasable paper. So if I screwed up, I could erase it. But then I also discovered that the erasable paper would kind of fade over time. So like if you smudge it, or if your hands were like greasy or whatever, that stuff would like rub off, and it was not a good scene. So when I finally got my first personal computer, and it was a hand-me-down from a friend, right? Some people lived in the neighborhood, they were pretty well off, and the guy bought himself, at that time, a brand new Mac computer. This is like late 80s, and he gave me his old Apple IIe. Included with that was the Quark word processor. And it was so revelatory for me, because at that time, I'd finally gotten to college, and when I could type papers, and I could just edit my work, I could just cut and copy and paste and move things around and adjust, and I could see what it looked like before it hit the paper. It was so mind-blowing. But I did take multiple keyboarding classes. So I took one in junior high, I took one in high school, and then when I got to technical college, I did the technical college route myself. They had a keyboarding class that was required in the business program that I was in. And at that time, they did have typewriters, where you could, it's like, okay, you're being timed, but if you make a mistake, you can opt to go back and correct it, or you can move forward and take the ding on the mistake and get more words per minute. So there's kind of like this balance. So I'm always curious, like how many of you actually had a class where you were taught how to keyboard? Okay. And when I say that, that's like where they teach you to put your hands on ASDF and JKL semicolon, right? And everything should be, yeah, there you go, Mavis Beacon. Yeah, you guys ever hear that's a piece of software that people used to use to teach themselves? Now, a lot of younger people, and if I look at my son, for example, right? He was never formally taught to keyboard in any of his classes, but I see he's like, and why? Because he's playing Battlefield all the time or whatever, and whatever the case is, he's got a technique where he can type really fast and pretty accurately, right? But it used to be kind of a thing, like kind of almost a specialty craft to be a typist. And if you watch people who are really well trained at it, because there are people that go through like the admin professional program here, for example, and they are like really sharp on the typing. This is a big part of what you do, and you don't want to be hampered by like not being able to do like this basic skill, So I have this interesting little assignment here, and I'm hoping you guys just do it right now here in class. So let's all go to this link.
Under 4 or 5? No,
We're in Unit 5. Oh no. All right, well, hold on a second here. Oh my gosh, that's horrible.
sounds like my disconnect extension.
It's horrible when I provide a link and it doesn't. I just tested it the other day. I swear to God, it worked. Notice what I did is I got rid of the www on the address, hoping that might fix it. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. All right, so I discovered that that link wasn't working, so what I did is I updated the link to this alternate site here, and here in class we did all go to this link, and then we took this test. So the way that it works, I'll just start the process, is you'll go in here, it'll put up something on the screen, and the one thing I don't like about this site is all the ads on it, frankly, because here I am doing my video and I'm promoting other people's products. It takes a moment to load up, and there it is. And you can see you have a flashing cursor there, so make sure you click into that, and then the moment you start typing, the timer is going. Now I'm not going to do this again because we just did it in class. I managed to hit 43 words a minute with no errors when I did this in 1 minute's time, and see where you get. And then once you get your results of this, just simply do a screen grab of like this portion of the screen, submit it for the assignment, and that's it. If you're not happy with your results, there's lots of sites like this where you can go practice and they give you challenges if that's something you're really concerned about. What I think is fascinating about keyboarding skills, though, folks, is you might have fantastic keyboarding skills when it comes to writing like traditional like words, but then all of a sudden you're learning how to code, right? And all of a sudden you're doing brackets and semicolons and curly braces and stuff you don't normally type. And that takes a little bit different type of skill, frankly, to kind of build up to the point where you have fast keyboarding skills for coding. Okay, so that's something that just comes with practice. There's no real shortcut to it, except that's not entirely true. Here's what coders do often, is when you're working in a tool, and I showed you some new software tools in the web programming class, like I don't know how many of you are using brackets or what other tools you're playing with, but when you get a better coding tool, coding tools have built into them what's called IntelliSense. So they anticipate, like you typed, let's say an H, it might predict that you're either typing HTML or head or header or H1 or H2, and it'll give you a list, and then you can kind of either arrow down to it or use your mouse and click on something, and it will auto-complete what you're typing off. And so that's one of the little tricks that we get as coders. There's no real workaround for having at least decent keyboarding skills. It's just something you have to develop when you code, because that's like one of your primary tools. The other thing that you should think about when you're working with a keyboard is, what kind of keyboard are you using, right? So I'm looking out around the room, and a lot of you have your laptops here. Then we have our school desktops that have old school traditional keyboards. And you know what? In a lot of ways, I learned on keyboards like that with a 10 key on the side. And I even buy laptops. My school one doesn't have it, but my personal laptop does have a 10 key on the side. I really dig that a lot, especially if you do like spreadsheets and a lot of number entry. So other keyboards, like if you go over to like a Macintosh platform, they have keyboards with really shallow keys, and a lot of our laptops now have really shallow keys too. Some of us have like small form factor notebooks or Chromebooks that have kind of keyboards that are a little more squished together and the keys are a little bit smaller. Then you find yourself going to a big keyboard and you're off a little bit, and that's kind of what was happening to me yesterday, I think, because I was going from my laptop to a regular keyboard to my Mac keyboard, and my Mac keyboard's like this little Bluetooth one, and, and it kind of throws off because you're used to that scale. Gamers, and I know we always have a lot of gamers in our programs, right? Gamers are into what? Mechanical keyboards these days with super fast reaction times. And you know what mechanical keyboards are? Keyboards we used to have 30 or 40 years ago, the ones that click when you press the button, so you know that you actually got a key press. And in some ways I do like those better, and some of those are completely adjustable too, which I think is interesting. But when you guys go out shopping for a computer, particularly for laptops, that should be one of your primary considerations is, what's the keyboard like? Is this a usable keyboard? That was a big consideration for me when I was shopping for stuff. Often if I buy a pre-configured system, I might go, oh, that's the keyboard that comes with, or I'll be getting a different one. And that's just kind of a given, So think about those things because I think they're kind of important. The other thing I want to talk about is another aspect of keyboarding that we don't necessarily think about, and that's this thing about keyboard shortcuts. And I'm going to use this to kind of cover both the concept of keyboard shortcuts and to talk about Google Apps at the same time. So one of our activities in here is to explore the Office and app suites, and really I'm trying to like change the thinking here, because in the past we always talked about Office suites. And when I started working in industry, it wasn't Microsoft Word that was the big word processor, believe it or not. It was WordPerfect. This is back when DOS was the operating system and not Windows. It was WordPerfect, and WordPerfect was the tool. If you were working in an office setting, that's the piece of software you needed to know in order to do just about anything. And WordPerfect was very powerful. Despite its primitive look, you could do a lot with it, and a lot of people became experts at it. And then Microsoft Word came out, and a lot of that expertise was unnecessary. So when you use WordPerfect, a lot of people would have these keyboard overlay things they'd lay on top of their keyboards, so they knew if they pressed Control Shift F5 it did this, and if all the little shortcut things, because that's how you could control WordPerfect. You didn't have these graphical menus and mouse clicks and right clicks to do the stuff that you normally do. So it's kind of an interesting way to work. These days here at Gateway, as soon as you start here as a student, they give you an email account. And that email account runs on top of what we call the Google Apps Suite. It's something that a lot of us are familiar with either from our earlier days of schooling or just from our personal lives, because we just prefer to use Gmail as an email platform, and I think it's probably the most popular one out there now. But when you do log into your email, and I'm just giving you a disclaimer here, I am putting up my school email account on screen. I can't predict what's on my screen, so it's not to show you the messages, but Gmail is kind of like the root of their whole app suite. So it's this is kind of the entry point for most of what you do. Whether or not you're aware of it, attached to the Google App Suite, you got this little, what we call the waffle icon up at the top, which is a gateway, no pun intended, or maybe a little bit.
Are you talking about the laptop company?
No, I'm talking about, this is the gateway to a lot of the applications that are available through Google that are bundled in with your Google account. When you have a personal Gmail account and you hit that same button, you have a lot of the same pieces of software, but they're delivered to you in a different way because they assume you're a consumer, this is the stuff you'll do, but here in an enterprise environment, you're going to get a different listing of products. And you guys might even be getting a different listing of products than what I have on the screen. But if you start to explore this, there's some really key products in here you guys really need to be aware of. The search feature, right? Well, most of us use Google to search with, right? And a lot of times that's just by virtue of opening a tab and just typing in the address bar, right? And it'll trigger Google search automatically if you're using Google Chrome. Or if you have Google as a start page like I do, you know, you can type your search in here. But notice, I clicked here. Did you see what happened? It took me right to the address bar anyhow. Right. So that's actually an app inside the app suite. Search is one of the apps, and it gets bundled into your account. So let's talk about some of these other tools. You can see that you can access your Gmail. I'm already in there. Another tool that I use real heavily is the calendar tool. And you know, when I got the job here, you know, one of the questions they gave me during my interview was like, how do you organize yourself? How do you keep track of all your tasks and activities? And I'm like, and I didn't know that I was giving the perfect answer. I was like, well, I'm a huge fan of the Google Calendar. I use it to kind of put all my stuff into so I don't forget when to pay my bills or show up for something or when the kids have an appointment or whatever. And that was the perfect answer because they use it so heavily here. So a lot of the stuff on here, for example, are the courses I teach, right? So things that I put into the calendar myself. But there's also the capability, so for example, like something like this, where we went on a tour of Rockwell Automation earlier in the week where my boss puts it on my calendar. I get a notification in my email. It says, hey, you're invited to this thing. And then you can say yes, no, or maybe. And then if you can't go or you put in a maybe, you have to put in an excuse like, hey, I'm teaching right now. Or I'm sleeping in the middle of the night, so I can't go. But then as soon as I answer yes to it, it pops up on my calendar. Now remember when I told you earlier that Blackboard's got a calendar feature? You can actually take the due dates from your calendar and feed them into this Google Calendar. Then you can load the apps on your devices, iOS or Android, and it will remind you. So every time I have these little notifications here, and you're going to see, well, I guess you're not going to see, but for example, I have a reminder in there, a calendar entry for the Web 1 course that follows this, and so I get a reminder, and this is totally customizable. I get a reminder by text 2 hours in advance, and then a calendar reminder 1 hour in advance. And the reason I set it up like that is I live an hour drive away. So at the very worst, right, it's like 2 hours in advance. It's enough time to get up, take a shower, have something to eat, and get in the car. 1 hour in advance, when I get that notice, it's like, uh-oh, I'm almost late already because I got an hour drive. So you can think about like how you do those things, but it's such a useful tool. And the fun thing is, for example, when you're in an enterprise environment like this, so, and not that you would do this with other students, but if you were in a work world like I am, I can actually look at like our department associate's calendar, so I can click her little box, right? And I can see her calendar. And then I can click my boss's calendar, and I can see his calendar. Isn't that a trip? And so like if I'm like, hey, I need to find a time to talk with my boss, so I'll click, you know, next week, and it's like, it looks like he's free right here, you know? I'll say, hey, Ray, do you got time next week at 1 o'clock to talk to me? You know, see like the thing? And it can get a little bit overwhelming. And you can see that there's also plugins, so I can like click a little holiday thing and it shows me all the US holidays, or if you're, you know, of a certain religious persuasion, you can pull in like the Greek Orthodox calendar, you know, so I know when Easter is for Greeks, you know, or, you know, Ramadan or whatever your persuasion is. And then you also see that I get invited to some things like this, and see how it's crossed out? I said no to that one, right? And then if I look at some of these other entries, and I'm trying to find one that's not going to have any sensitive information in here. So let's say like this one here. So this is a meeting that I ran on Monday morning. So I click on it and it gives me details. But notice that it doesn't just tell you when and where I have to be, but it also attaches to it an automatic Google Hangout meeting room right to the environment. So if I can't go to the meeting, you click on that, you can join the meeting. Or you can call in. You can also add agenda items to it. So I'm going to actually go into the edit mode here so you can see that more clearly. So I ran this meeting the other day, and these were our agenda items. Sometimes I attach documents to it. Sometimes I put links in here to certain resources. And then as I invite people to a meeting, notice I can see whether or not they're going to attend. And then some people will put notes in to let me know what's up or why they can't attend. So I can see in advance who's going and who's not. And it's really simple to add a guest. You just basically add their email address, you save it, and then it sends out an invite to them. So it's really a cool system. And you know what? In professional organizations, especially in IT folks, this is hardcore. You know, this is an app that you should get familiar with, because you're going to a professional environment and everybody's going to be calendaring you. I'm trying to get my wife to go on board with this too, honestly. Yes, Joe?
So the assignments that we should get services, are they services on the Google, or just services on the gateway, including forms?
No. Well, let me point out that we're going there right now. Okay, so that's a really good question. So Joe's asking to explore all the gateway services, and really what I'm trying to get you to do is explore the app suite. So and the gateway to that, and no joke intended, I probably shouldn't use it. The doorway to get to all the apps is through this waffle icon. And if you start scrolling through and look at some of the things that are available inside here, these are some apps that you probably already use. All right? But then you'll probably find, if you keep scrolling down, there's things you've never even heard of. And if you keep going, there's even more. And then you know what? You can buy third-party apps to plug in on top of it. And the collection of apps is very extensive, and all of them are bundled into your account. So like you were asking about Google Forms, well, there it is. And we had an assignment that's, I think, due in a day or two called Tools for Keeping It Straight, the wiki assignment, right? And I was talking about note-taking apps. Well, here's a great note-taking app right here. It's called Google Keep. If you go into that tool, right, notice what I do is sometimes I go to meetings, I forget to bring pencil and paper or a laptop or something. I log into Google Keep with my phone, and if somebody says something interesting or shares a link or something, I just come in here, I just click create a new note wherever that is, take a note right here, type something in, and close it, and then it's there. And you can drop in links, pictures, images, whatever, and you can arrange this, and guess what? Any device that you sign in from, it's there. So here's a tip for a really fun product. I use OneNote mostly these days, but I still use Evernote, so there's other competing products. But yeah. I use it for groceries often too, but I found for groceries what I do now is I'll write an email message and leave it in draft mode, and I just bring up my email. So, it's kind of the same difference. Probably the big tool here, though, in the Google App Suite is the Google Drive, which is your online storage location, and the Docs, Sheets, and Slide apps that are attached to it. So I'm going to go into Google Drive. So this is like your online file repository that it's attached to your Gmail account. And here at Gateway, we do extensive work in a shared environment inside Google Drive. So you see that it has a complete set of folders, right? And documents and all that. But here's the interesting part about this. When you come in to Google Drive, you can go to this new thing, you can create folders, you can upload stuff. But here's the killer tools, right? Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. So for some of you that don't want to install like an Office suite on your machine, this might be your best option for creating documents with zero to no cost here, because it's completely free, right? Even if you have a personal version. You can come up here and title your document, whatever you want. Every few seconds it's saving, this little thing. Automatically saves, so you don't have to worry about losing anything. And you can just type like a regular word processor and create your content. The neat thing about this is this button here. I can share this document with specific people. So if I wanted to share it with one of my other instructors, I just type in their name, I can send them a little note, I go like, hi, here you go, click send, it sends them a link, and then they have a certain level of capability within the document. Right now, it's set so that this person has the ability to edit the file, right? And then I can also switch that where they can comment on it, but they can't change anything, or I can switch it to they can just view. One of the options I give you for turning in your homework this week is to actually share your work with me through a Google Doc, if you want to try it that way. So to do that, you got to make sure you put in my email address. I don't need to have edit capability, I only need to have view capability, just so you know that. So you can send me a link if you want, but more important is like you can actually just get the shareable link here, copy that and paste that into your Blackboard submission. Another option that you have with these shared documents is you can actually change who can access the document by using this little approach here. And what I always recommend to people, if you're kind of sharing it generically, you don't want to choose the ones that say, to share with an instructor now, anyone at GTC with the link or just anyone at gtc.edu. Yours is going to say mail.gtc.edu. You guys are in a different domain. I won't be able to see it. So you really need to choose this one. Anyone with the link is a safer option. Just kind of giving you a heads up. Now, just to kind of goof around with this a little bit, and some of you may have seen this feature before and maybe some of you haven't, is back in our course shell, I have this little thing about keyboard shortcuts that you know. And I went ahead and I created a shared Google spreadsheet. So if you click on that link in the assignment, it will take you to this spreadsheet. And I already put in one example. So, and those of you who have never worked in a spreadsheet, is there anybody in that category? Good, okay. I always worry because sometimes people have not ever used one, right? All a spreadsheet is a document that has rows and columns that you can enter information into, and you can do a whole lot more. When you use a proper spreadsheet like Excel, you have the capability of putting in mathematical formulas, doing lookups, tying it to external data, linking spreadsheets together, all this like crazy stuff. But in this case, all I'm looking for is a list. So I started off the list like this.
What's it under?
It's on our Unit 5, and it's right here as an activity.
Okay.
Share the keyboard shortcuts you know, and follow that link. And then it...
Link to a document in there?
All right, so the whole point of this is this document is shared, and I see that a few of you have logged in to the document. So if you know a keyboard shortcut, that's kind of cool. I put in an example. On a Windows machine, if I press Control plus S, it will save in most programs. And so what I'm kind of looking for is for you guys to throw in some entries. But the beauty of this technology is once the document is shared with somebody and they have edit capabilities, you can get multiple people typing in the document at the same time. And some of you are aware of that already, but some of you may have not ever seen this before. And this is a really powerful feature because a lot of times when we have meetings here on campus, we'll be doing a Google Hangout, and then we'll have a shared document open or a phone call open, and we'll be working on a document collaboratively in real time, even though we're in different locations. It is really, really cool. So you see, there's a bunch of people in here already that are adding things in. This is not a graded thing, by the way. This is more just to show you the capability. But I think it's really kind of fun. This capability has been around a really long time. In fact, Google released this maybe back in the mid-2000s. And a student showed it to me when I was teaching at the University of Phoenix, and it blew me away, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. Oh my God, the possibilities. Yes, and we see we got a Mac user there. We know who that is, right? But yeah, absolutely. Macs have the same kind of thing. You know, so throw some stuff in there, share with your peers, but more so experiment with the shared document feature. I know I'm running a little bit over time here, folks, but I do want to talk about Microsoft Office. Cordy, you just went through the process of getting Microsoft Office, and you have to put in a support ticket to get access to it. So that's one thing you guys need to make note of. When you're here on campus to put in a support ticket, all you have to do is type support.gtc.edu. If you are off campus, you need to put in You have to have a VPN connection first to access this service, just so you know that. But you can also call the support line, and I think somewhere they probably provide that on the Gateway website. I know the on-campus extension is like 3685. But if you go to the Gateway website and just search for support, you'll find the phone number. You can call in and ask for the same thing. So I'm assuming that you come in here and you probably find something for Microsoft Office. I don't see a listing for Office, so I would probably come in here and just choose Other, and then just say, access to Microsoft Office, and just say, please give me access to Microsoft Office, and it'll set up an account for you. The Gateway systems, folks, when you log into your Google email, you use you use your student ID number and your password, and most of the services you connect to here work that way, but Microsoft Office does have a separate login. Once your account is created, you can just simply go to office.com, and then if you're not logged in, I stay logged in, but otherwise you would get a login screen. And once you're into this environment, you have a completely different set of applications that are available to you as a student for free. All the little links that you see at the top of this dashboard here are the online versions of the same Microsoft products that you might have installed on your machine. So you can get Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc., all running in your browser. A very good option if you have like a limited computer system like a Chromebook. But notice that they also have this little thing that says all apps, and if you click that and start to explore, there's a lot of stuff in here that maybe you've never seen before, and some of it is really, really cool. I would anticipate that the primary thing that you would use in this environment would actually be Word, Excel, and PowerPoint for the most part, maybe a little bit of OneNote, but there's some others that I would encourage you to explore, like Sway. That's a really cool product. There's also SharePoint, which is one of the disciplines I teach here at Gateway. That's a really, really powerful tool. Another notable thing real quick before we run out of time is this ability here to actually install Microsoft Office natively on your machines. You can install it on up to 5 machines using that button. I'm going to repeat that. Later on in this course, I'm also going to show you another service that's available to you through Microsoft called Microsoft Azure Cloud. And that's where we get all of our Microsoft software for free. And it's not really necessary at this point in your academic career, but as we move into your subsequent semesters, when you get to semester 2 and 3, you start taking like your database class, your JavaScript class, and .NET classes, you will need access to certain Microsoft software. And through that site, you can get just about any piece of Microsoft software for free, including Windows, just so you guys know that. I will demonstrate that in a separate class session, though. All right, this video will end here. I think we covered a lot of material, probably more than I thought we'd actually get to today. But you can use the stuff that you've learned here to help complete the assignments in this unit. All right, the video ends here.